The genesis of this whole making and thinking project came from our project that we did in response to the COVID-19 lockdown. That was called CSM Loves the NHS. That was a project that we designed a downloadable pattern, and the idea was our students, no matter where they were in the world, could download the pattern and make some scrubs for the NHS. We'd had a really big response, lots of publicity and lots of the public getting involved, including lots of responses from trusts and hospitals looking for us to make scrubs with them. One of them was from Great Ormond Street with a really interesting idea about making bespoke gowns for their long-term patients that are in hospital. We loved that idea, and we were really interested in looking at how the garments, the colours, the aesthetics of gowns and garments would affect the well-being and even the recovery of a patient. They then gave us a profile of a patient, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they were interested in, what clothes they wore, and from that we were able to give that to the students.
The patient that I was able to identify is someone who I was seeing weekly, working on various different goals during her admission, and she is someone that's been with us for, as I said before, kind of 2-3 years with this initial hospital admission, having had admissions before that. And she's 7 or 8 years old, so this is a large majority of her life. She's had an inpatient experience.
Our students aren't used to working with that age range, and they're very conceptual. So this idea of working and having a client or having a patient profile to work with has been amazing.
A lot of fashion people, if you don't mind me saying, are quite selfish. They rely on what they know and they don't like to push the boundaries. And I think by having a 9-year-old girl clientele, that is like the most peculiar clientele to ever have ever.
The first week is making, and we'd like you to all make one pair of scrubs based on the pattern that Chris devised for the CSM Loves NHS project.
Normally we're teaching our students to think about design, think about process, but this time we had to think about the knowledge that was passed to us from the organisation, from the hospital, and how to translate that to our students, but then how they can translate that through their own design process, through their working. For the first week of the project, I delivered a series of workshops with my students, so took them through the process of pattern cutting. So no matter what level they were, we could bring everyone together and they could go away and make their own copies of the scrubs patterns that they could then later combine with the prints that they created.
The scrubs was, it was really fun for me, and it was also very frustrating because it was my first time doing pattern cutting, but it's all part of the process, and you know, it's a good place to start.
The second week focused very much on this idea of thinking, and we were thinking about social design and how what you design can have an impact on somebody. And the students were very focused on the pattern on the fabric. So we gave them the patient profile to look at, and from that they had to start thinking about the colours, the aesthetics, what the patient had said that they liked.
So the students responded to the patient profile through drawing, collage, exploration, and my job was to extract the elements and turn them into repeats.
So I approached the project trying to incorporate things I did as a child, and I remember on long train journeys I used to play this game with my sister and my mum, where you fold a piece of paper 4 times and someone draws the head, someone the middle, the stomach and the trousers and the feet. And it gives a really nice random element to it. It was really nice to see the patient chop this up and play around with it and use it to collage with her own design. It was nice to feel like I'd given her something to work with, even if it wasn't this print that ended up on the garment in the end.
I was thinking about Rorschach inkblot tests and how it mirrors, the inkblot mirrors, and you see what you want in the image, and how that reflects your current mind state. There was a tie there with the hospital and what these kids, like, they could see fun things in the images.
From someone who knows what the NHS is like, having a mum who's been a GP for 40 years, I was able to speak on what the problems she thought was with the gown and how it could be made better. And she managed to put me in touch with a parent of a child patient who had cancer. We just sort of looked at how their child copes in hospital, what helps them, what doesn't help them.
We had to think about actually some quite specific things. So her team told us that we had to work in certain colours because they need to be able to see blood spots. So that was a practicality we didn't know about. They also told us about certain patterns would bring on hallucinations. Again, a practicality that we didn't know about. But the bit that was the funniest was that the patient had some really, really definite opinions on how she wanted the pattern.
Once we started getting the feedback from the students, we could sort of get their designs and sort of see maybe where things were maybe kind of missed or some lost in translation, and just we were coming from slightly different angles, whether it was from a more artistic angle versus a sort of 7, 8, 9-year-old. That's for her when she really opened up and was able to see the worth of the project and go, oh, okay, no, hold on, this bit isn't right. And then actually it was lovely to see that blossom, and she then started cutting up the different designs and scribbling bits out and going, no, I want this to be this and this to be that, and that's the wrong colour. And I think the idea that we'll get something tangible out of it as well is incredibly exciting.
I guess this project opened my eyes to the world of social design, and that's something I've taken into my final project, looking at how I can make a positive change with fashion.
You can take clothing, but it's not just clothing, and you can have a societal effect.
I think what's been so interesting is the rich knowledge and research that has come from the project, but the potential for it as well. We've talked about aesthetics, patterns and colours, and how important that is to people's well-being, whether it is in a hospital or just in general life. But we don't often talk about that kind of thing within garments. We talk about it in space and interiors, and yet we know that the way we wear garments, how they look, really affects us. And we don't really understand that. So I think it would be really interesting to unpick that and move forward and carry on this research into how do the aesthetics of clothing and garments affect our well-being, whether it's in a hospital or not.